Today we start learning the laws of Shabbat based on the Tur and the shulchan-aruch. The laws of Shabbat start on Tur or Haim in chapter 242. It opens with several statements of the rabbis in Masechet Shabbat regarding the importance of honoring Shabbat. He who respects Shabbat will inherit a land with no borders. That is based on Isaiah 58. Another rabbi adds, this person would also be exempt from being subjugated to the nations. Rav Yehuda adds, whoever respects Shabbat will be granted all his wishes. Rabbi Bar Abba says, whoever observes Shabbat, even if he is a pagan, such as Enosh, which according to the Midrash was the first one to practice paganism, all of his sins will be forgiven. All these statements show us that at the time of the end of the period of the Mishnah, the beginning of the period of the Talmud, the status of Shabbat was not that high. Most people did not observe fully the Shabbat or did not respect the Shabbat enough, and the rabbis had to launch a campaign of encouraging people in all kind of ways to observe Shabbat. The first statement speak about respecting the Shabbat, Oneg Shabbat, making sure that you enjoy the Shabbat, while the last one says, Kol ha-meshaber Shabbat ki-ilchato, that one must observe the Shabbat according to the law, and that again shows that not everybody kept Shabbat with all details. And the interesting thing about that statement is, even if he is a pagan, like the first pagan, he will be forgiven, but there's no clear statement that that person has to abandon his avodah zarah, his paganism, unless we assume that the fact that he keeps Shabbat shows that he does not practice idolatry anymore. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, ilmale shamru Yisrael Shabbat rishona k'ilchata, lo shalta b'hem midat hadin. Rav Yehuda says, if Am Yisrael would have observed the first Shabbat they were given, everything would be perfect. There would be the utopian world to come. There would be no more disease or stress or anything like that. Yeah, obviously he refers to the first Shabbat when Bnei Israel were given the manna in the desert, and some people went out to gather the manna even though they were told not to go out on Shabbat. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai adds, Ilmale meshamerim Yisrael shtei Shabbatot miyad nigalin. If we observe 2 days of Shabbat, we will be redeemed immediately. And that again shows that at the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, this is the 2nd century of the Common Era, most people did not fully observe Shabbat. So it's important to understand that today, when we speak about the time of the Mishnah, we speak with nostalgia. We say back then everything was perfect, everybody was observant. It's not exactly accurate. The tool continues after bringing all these statements about the Oneg Shabbat. Another quote from Masechet Shabbat: "B'meh me'anego bedagim gdolim ve'rashei shumin ve'tavshil shel tradin." How do you honor the Shabbat with big fish and heads of garlic and a pot of a stew of leek. So that was for them, again, to see in context, for them that was considered an opulent meal. Fish, garlic, and leek. People could not afford to eat meat regularly as we eat today. That has implications on the idea that people say that you have to eat meat on every meal, and then on top of that you also have to have fish in every meal. That is because we got used to eating meat, and then we look at the Gemara, and then we say that the Gemara says you have to eat fish. So we think that fish is on top, is an addition to the meat. But this is not what the Gemara says. Back then, on weekdays, people would eat only vegetables. The fish was a delicacy that was reserved for Shabbat. Meat was eaten very rarely, maybe once a month, and definitely after the destruction of the temple, there were less opportunities to eat meat. People usually waited for animals to be really at the end of their life before they slaughter them. That's another story. But the idea of the Mishnah of the Gemara is that you do something which is more of the ordinary, but there's no specific demand that one would eat fish or meat, and we'll see it later when we talk about the Seudot. The Talmud also says, "Afilu davar mu'at v'asor lichvot Shabbat have oneg." Even if you added just a little bit, you change just a little bit your usual presentation of food for Shabbat, that is enough. And Rav Papa brings an example, kasad harsana, a dish of salted fish, like a herring or something like that. It says, "Hainu lemisha sha'ad hukalu," that it is only for one who is really very poor, cannot afford more than that. The Tur, Rabbeinu Yaakov ben Asher, says that several times he discussed the issue with his father, Rabbeinu Asher, to ask, "Kamoni hayom sheyesh li me'at misheli ve'eno maspik li ve'tzarich ani la'achirim, im ani bichal aseh shabbatecha hol im lav." I asked him, I don't have enough to put, I can't do something special for Shabbat. Should I make what is called aseh shabbatecha hol, treat the Shabbat like a regular day in terms of food, or should I ask for charity? V'lo yeshivani davar ba'ur, he never answered me on that. Meaning that Rabbeinu Asher was uncomfortable giving his son a ruling. And that's another important message to us, that not always one can have a clear-cut ruling, a psak. Sometimes you will have an answer, sometimes you will have options, and you will have to look for an answer yourself. So the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, avoided answering his son clearly, because probably as a of the personal connection that they had, he didn't feel comfortable telling him, you have to go ask for charity. On the other hand, he didn't feel comfortable telling him, eat with whatever you can, and maybe by that he would tell him, you don't have to show a special respect for Shabbat. So he left it to Rabbeinu Yaakov, to his son, to search on his own. And he says, I found in Rashi's commentary to Pirkei Avot that the Mishnah, where it says Heve az kanamer, be fierce as a leopard or as a tiger, is written next to the Mishnah that says Aseh Shabbatcha hol ve'ad yitzarich lebriot, that you have to, if you don't have enough food on Shabbat, you treat the Shabbat like a regular day. So according to Rashi, לא להורוי דרבי עקיבא לא אמר אלא למי שהשעה דחוקה לו ביותר, אבל צריך אדם לזרז עצמו כנמר וכנשר לכבד שבתות ביותר. The juxtaposition of the two Mishnayot, one says be fierce as a tiger, the other one says treat Shabbat like a regular day in terms of food if you don't have enough. According to Rashi, the juxtaposition is coming to show us that is an exception, that one should be fierce as a tiger to make sure that he could respect Shabbat, even if it means for him to go and ask for charity. That's an interesting conclusion, because one would say that the exact opposite could be derived from the juxtaposition of the Mishnayot. If they are next to each other, and it says Aseh Shabbatecha hol, it means that even though you have to be fierce as a tiger, meaning to display this quality trait, you're not supposed to rely on charity to honor the Shabbat. However, the tool Rabbeinu Yaakov concluded from that tzarich adam letzamtzem bishar yamim kedei lechabed haShabbat. One, if one does not want to rely on charity and does not have enough to respect the Shabbat, one should just eat less on other days to make Shabbat stand out in a special day. I heard from my rabbi when I was in high school, Rabbi Yonah Krieger, told me about his own father who was in the concentration camps and survived. And one of the things that he wouldn't he would never abandon was that idea of Oneg Shabbat. And since they would get one stale slice of bread daily, and that was their whole food, there was no way that you could save from that food. He found a way to get more for Shabbat, but the way he did it, he couldn't save like one slice because it would not be edible on the next. It would be inedible the next day. So on Sunday he would eat only 5/6 of the slice and would save 1/6. On the second day he would eat that leftover plus 4 portions of the new slice and would keep 2 for the next day. On the next day would eat the 2 leftovers and 3 more slices. So every day would eat 5 out of the 6 pieces of that meager meal, and every day would save 1 more for the next day until on Friday night he was able to save 2 and eat 2 on Shabbat. It's an amazing dedication to the idea of Shabbat, and maybe that was really gave him the willpower to survive the difficulties of the camps. Going back to the shulchan-aruch, he quotes other stories from the Mishnah of people who try to respect Shabbat as much as possible, and then towards the end of the siman he adds this: 10 takanot tiken Ezra, ואחת מהן שיהיו מכבסין בגדיהן בחמישי בשבת לכבוד Shabbat. The tool mentions that out of the 10 regulations, the 10 special laws that Ezra, the scribe, decrees, one of them was for people to wash their clothes on Thursday so they would have clean garments for Shabbat. That was the tool's introduction to Hilchot Shabbat, and he says, "Ve'ata asader kol hadevarim shehem kodem haShabbat letzorech haShabbat." Let me now present all the halachot of things that are done before Shabbat in honor of Shabbat. That's the tool. The shulchan-aruch typically is much shorter. He sums up this long discussion of the tool in 2 sentences. He says, "Afilu mi shetzarich la'acherim, im yesh lo me'at mishelo, tzarich lezarez atzmo lekabed et haShabbat." Even if one relies on the sustenance or the generosity of others, if he has a little of his own, he should try to work hard to make Shabbat a special day. And when it was stated that one would rather eat the same as he eats every other day and not rely on charity, if one is really on the verge of poverty, so one should calculate in advance and make sure that Shabbat stands out. Thank God we live in a relatively very affluent society. There's prosperity. Most people have like the basic needs for Shabbat, and that is not a problem. But if communities know that there are people who are needy, they try to help them. The greatest help that we could offer to people who cannot afford to do Shabbat is to try to help them find a job or teach them some kind of profession so they could take care of themselves. This is the greatest level of charity, as mentioned in Hilchot Matnot Aniyim by Maimonides. Then the shulchan-aruch also adds this: mitakanat Ezra, shiyu mechabesin begadim b'chamishi b'Shabbat mipnei kvod Shabbat. The takana of Ezra was to wash clothes on Thursday in order to have clean garments on Shabbat. It's important to look at this halacha in the context of our reality. Of when they say that the takana was to wash clothes on Thursday. It's not that Thursday was a laundry day. They had one laundry day, but what Ezra mandated, according to this statement, is that laundry day will be on Thursday, so they have clean garments on Shabbat. Meaning, people had only one robe, and if they had to wash it, so it will be clean for Shabbat. The situation today is totally different. One can buy garments for $5. Of course, it could go much higher, but the normal person has more than one shirt or suit or pants to wear. But the importance of this halakha for us is that if when we understand that for them laundry was not a regular daily activity, and if we recall also that meant a lot of work, going to the river, drawing water, boiling water, scrubbing, etc. Even some of us remember our grandmothers, or we heard stories from our grandmothers about that. Then we understand that this was not a daily thing, and therefore a lot of halachot, a lot of laws that have to do with laundry, with washing clothes, are affected by that, especially the laws that are related to Hol HaMoed, to the period of mourning, and to Tisha B'Av, and we'll discuss that when we get there. Have a great day.